r/pettyrevenge security guard called me too cheap, so I destroyed his career. Sir, I think you're in the wrong store. I looked up from the Omega Seamaster I'd been examining, confused. The security guard standing behind me was built like a linebacker, arms crossed, with a name tag reading Derek pinned to his black uniform shirt. Excuse me, I said, straightening up from the display case. This is Bucherer, Derek announced loudly, like I couldn't read the giant gold letters on the storefront. Our watches start at 5,000. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the fossil store down by the food court. I felt my face flush as other customers turned to stare. I was wearing jeans and a plain hoodie, my usual Saturday attire, but this was humiliating. I was just asking about the sale price on this piece, I said, keeping my voice level. Derek's laugh was sharp and mocking. Sale price? Buddy, if you have to ask about sales, you're definitely too cheap to shop here. He gestured dismissively at my outfit. Look, I'm trying to save you some embarrassment. This isn't Target. These watches cost more than most people make in 6 months. The saleswoman behind the counter looked mortified but said nothing. A well-dressed couple nearby whispered to each other, clearly entertained by the spectacle. My stomach churned with a mixture of rage and humiliation. I can afford whatever I want to buy, I said quietly, my programmer's logical mind trying to de-escalate while my emotions screamed for satisfaction. Sure you can, Derek smirked, moving closer. His voice dropped to what he probably thought was a discreet volume, but it carried anyway. Listen, pal, I've been working security at upscale places for 8 years. I know exactly what kind of customer belongs here and what kind doesn't. You're not it. You're wasting everyone's time, including mine. He leaned in closer, and I caught a whiff of cheap cologne mixed with coffee breath. Why don't you head over to Best Buy? I hear they've got some nice Casio digital watches on clearance. The couple nearby actually snickered at that. The saleswoman busied herself with paperwork, clearly wanting no part of the confrontation. Derek stood there with his arms crossed again, wearing a satisfied grin like he'd just performed some public service. Something cold settled in my chest. Not the hot rage I'd felt moments before, something calculating and patient. I built a successful career in software development, owned my own condo downtown, and had a healthy 6-figure salary. But more importantly, I had skills that Derek couldn't even begin to comprehend. You know what? I said, forcing a smile. You're absolutely right. I should definitely shop somewhere more appropriate. Derek's grin widened. Exactly. See? I'm just trying to help everyone have a better day. I nodded and walked away from the display case, feeling Derek's satisfied gaze follow me out of the store. Behind me, I heard him say something to the saleswoman about keeping the riffraff out. As I walked through the mall's marble corridors, past the fountain and the other luxury boutiques, my mind was already working. Derek had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He judged me, humiliated me publicly, and dismissed me like I was worthless. What he didn't know was that I had a very particular set of skills, cultivated over years of debugging complex systems and investigating security vulnerabilities for Fortune 500 companies. Derek thought he knew exactly what kind of person I was. He was about to learn exactly what kind of person he'd just messed with. I drove home in silence, Derek's words echoing in my head. Asterisk too cheap. Not the right kind of customer, asterisk the humiliation burned worse than I'd expected, probably because part of me had internalized those judgments over the years. Growing up poor, I'd learned to dress down to avoid standing out, even after my income had grown exponentially. But Derek had crossed a line. This wasn't just about clothes or appearances anymore, it was about respect. Back in my home office, I cracked my knuckles and opened my laptop. Most people would vent to friends or write an angry Yelp review. But I wasn't most people. I was a penetration tester by trade, someone companies paid handsomely to find their vulnerabilities before the bad guys did. I started with the basics. Derek and Crosswinds Mall gave me dozens of LinkedIn profiles, but none matched. I expanded my search to include the mall's security company, Sentinel Protection Services. Their website was a joke, outdated PHP, probably hadn't been updated since 2015. But it did list their team leaders for various locations. Derek Morrison, Senior Security Specialist, Crosswinds Mall location. 8 years of experience, just like he'd bragged. Now we were getting somewhere. Social media was a goldmine. Derek's Facebook was wide open, no privacy settings whatsoever. Classic boomer security posture. His posts painted a picture, divorced, child support payments, constantly complaining about money while posting photos from expensive restaurants and sporting events. The math didn't add up. Security guards at upscale malls made decent money, but not courtside NBA tickets and $200 stakes money. Not with child support bleeding him dry every month. I dug deeper. His Instagram showed off luxury items, designer watches, electronics, expensive cologne. Always tagged with humble brags about treating myself and hard work pays off. But the timestamps were interesting. Most of the expensive purchases happened within days of posting complaints about customers leaving crap behind or dealing with shoplifters. A pattern was emerging. I pulled up the mall's incident reports through a public records request, amazing what you could get with the right FOIA paperwork. 3 months of data showed an unusually high number of lost and found items that were never claimed at Crosswinds compared to similar malls. Jewelry, electronics, designer bags, all logged by Derek Morrison. Then I found his eBay account. It wasn't hard, same username he used for everything else, another amateur mistake. Derek M_8834 had been selling a steady stream of estate sale finds and storage unit discoveries. Designer purses, high-end electronics, jewelry. The photos were clearly taken in the same room as his Instagram posts. But the smoking gun was a Tiffany bracelet listed 3 weeks ago. The description read, beautiful vintage piece, minor wear, from estate sale. The photo showed it sitting on Derek's kitchen counter, right next to his coffee maker that I recognized from his Facebook posts. I cross-referenced the timeline with the mall's incident reports. 2 days before Derek listed that bracelet, a customer had reported losing a Tiffany bracelet in the Nordstrom restroom. She'd filed a claim with mall security. Derek had taken the report personally. The bracelet was never entered into the lost and found system. I sat back in my chair, fingers drumming on the desk. This was bigger than I'd initially thought. Derek wasn't just an arrogant asshole, he was running a theft operation, skimming from lost and found and probably pocketing confiscated items from shoplifters. He'd called me a thief for wanting to know about sale prices. The irony was delicious. But I needed more evidence before I could move. Derek had humiliated me in public, but I was going to destroy his entire world with surgical precision. No rushed moves, no emotional mistakes. Time to dig deeper into Sentinel Protection Services and see just how deep this rabbit hole went. I spent the next 3 days methodically mapping Derek's operation. What started as personal revenge was becoming something much larger, and more dangerous. Sentinel Protection Services had contracts with 12 upscale shopping centers across the state. Their internal systems were laughably insecure. A simple SQL injection through their employee portal gave me access to incident reports from all locations. The pattern wasn't isolated to Crosswinds Mall. Derek had worked at 4 different Sentinel locations over his 8-year career, always requesting transfers after 18 to 24 months. At each location, lost and found discrepancies spiked during his tenure, then mysteriously returned to normal after he left. He wasn't just a petty thief, he was a professional, moving between locations before anyone noticed the pattern. But as I dug deeper into Sentinel's records, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Derek wasn't working alone. Marcus Webb, another senior guard, had followed Derek to 3 of his 4 assignments. Their schedules consistently overlapped during high-traffic periods when lost items peaked. Webb's eBay account, WebFinds_deals, showed the same suspicious selling patterns. Then I found the text messages. Derek's phone backup, stored conveniently in his iCloud account with the password Sentinel123, revealed months of coordination between him and Webb. They developed a sophisticated system. Derek would intercept lost and found items and confiscate merchandise from suspected shoplifters, while Webb handled the online sales and money laundering through multiple accounts. Got a nice Rolex from that punk kid yesterday, Derek had texted Webb 2 weeks ago. Asterisk, little rich boy was too scared to argue when I said his receipt looked fake. Asterisk. Webb's response, asterisk, beautiful. That's our mortgage payment right there. You're getting good at spotting the easy targets. Asterisk. My hands trembled as I read through more messages. They weren't just stealing lost items, they were actively targeting customers they deemed suspicious, confiscating legitimately purchased merchandise and reselling it. Young people, minorities, anyone who looked like they didn't belong in upscale stores. People like me. Some computer nerd was sniffing around the watch store today, Derek had texted just yesterday. Asterisk, dressed like a homeless guy but acting like he owned the place. Put him in his place real quick. These tech bros think they're hot shit with their startup money. Asterisk. The response from Webb made my vision blur with rage, asterisk, good work. Gotta keep the riffraff out so the real customers feel safe. Management loves that we maintain standards. Asterisk. They'd turned harassment into profit, and mall management was apparently eating it up. I leaned back from my computer, mind racing. This wasn't just about my wounded pride anymore. Derek and Webb were running a criminal enterprise, systematically targeting and stealing from customers while hiding behind badges and authority. But as I planned my next move, a new message notification popped up on Derek's phone backup. My stomach dropped as I read it. Asterisk, Webb here. Think we might have a problem. That guy from yesterday, the one you hassled at Booker. Store camera caught him taking pictures of you with his phone. Might want to keep an eye out. Asterisk. Derek's response was immediate, asterisk, shit. Description. Asterisk. Asterisk, tall, dark hair, hoodie. Looked like he was documenting everything. Think he's building a case. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'll handle it. Got his face on the security footage. Time to have another conversation with our tech bro friend. Asterisk. My heart pounded. I hadn't taken any pictures, I'd been too shocked and humiliated to think that clearly. But Derek and Webb believed I had evidence, which meant they saw me as a threat. A threat they were planning to handle. I quickly screenshotted the conversation and backed up everything I'd collected so far to encrypted cloud storage. Whatever Derek was planning, I needed to move fast. But first, I had to assume he'd be looking for me. And given what I'd learned about their operation, I wasn't sure exactly how far Derek and Webb were willing to go to protect their lucrative theft ring. The hunter had just become the hunted. I needed allies, and I needed them fast. Derek's threat changed everything. This was no longer just about methodical revenge, it was about staying ahead of 2 criminals who viewed me as a problem to be solved. My first call was to my old college roommate Jake, who now worked as a detective with the city police. We'd stayed close over the years, bonding over craft beer and our shared love of solving puzzles. His involved crime scenes, mine involved code. You're telling me mall security is running a theft ring? Jake asked after I'd laid out everything I discovered. We were sitting in his unmarked car outside a coffee shop, my laptop balanced between us displaying the evidence I'd compiled. Look at the pattern, I said, pointing to the spreadsheet I'd created. Lost and found items spike when Derek's working, disappear from inventory without being claimed, then show up on these eBay accounts within days. The text messages prove coordination. Jake scrolled through the screenshots, his expression growing darker. This is solid detective work, but I have to ask, how exactly did you obtain private text messages and internal company records? I've been dreading this question. Let's just say their cybersecurity is embarrassingly bad. Everything I found was essentially sitting in the open. That's not going to hold up in court if you obtained it illegally. I know, I said, frustrated. But it gives us a roadmap for legitimate investigation. Anonymous tips, public records requests, working with the victims who reported lost items. We can build a clean case. Jake closed the laptop and studied me. This started because some security guard was rude to you at a store, didn't it? Heat crept up my neck. He publicly humiliated me, called me too cheap to shop there. And now you've uncovered what looks like a multi-$1,000 theft operation. Jake shook his head. Your pettiness might have accidentally served justice. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognize the area code, same as the mall. Don't answer, Jake warned, but I was already swiping to pick up. Hello. This is Derek Morrison, Crosswinds Mall Security. His voice was artificially professional, but I caught the underlying tension. I understand you had some concerns about your experience at our facility yesterday. I'd like to meet and discuss how we can resolve this situation. My pulse hammered. I don't have any concerns. Now, I think we both know that's not entirely accurate. The professional mask slipped slightly. Look, maybe I came across a bit strong yesterday. These upscale retail environments can be sensitive about their customer experience. How about we grab coffee and clear the air? There might even be some compensation involved for your trouble. Jake was frantically shaking his head, drawing a finger across his throat. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I'm not really interested in compensation. Well, that's unfortunate. Derek's voice hardened. See, the thing is, mall security footage shows you taking unauthorized photographs of personnel and potentially conducting surveillance. That's actually illegal in this state without consent. My blood ran cold. He was lying, I hadn't taken any pictures, but he was establishing a narrative that could justify whatever he was planning. I didn't take any photographs. Camera evidence says otherwise. Now, we can handle this quietly between gentlemen, or I can file a formal complaint with the police about harassment and stalking. He paused. Your choice. Coffee meeting, or legal complications. The line went dead. Jake was already reaching for his radio. We need to move on this now. He's escalating because he feels cornered. But we don't have enough clean evidence yet. We have enough to start an investigation and keep you safe. Jake's expression was grim. This guy just threatened you over a recorded phone line. He's desperate, which makes him dangerous. As Jake called for backup units to start surveillance on Derek and Webb, I realized my simple revenge plot had spiraled into something far more complex. I'd wanted to destroy Derek's career, but now I was fighting for my own safety. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I wondered what other secrets Derek was willing to kill to protect. Jake's backup arrived faster than I'd expected, 2 unmarked cars and a patrol unit that parked strategically around the coffee shop. But as we waited for the surveillance teams to get into position at the mall, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized from my research, Sentinel Protection Service's main office. Answer it, Jake instructed, gesturing to the recording equipment he'd hastily set up. But keep him talking. I picked up on the 4th ring. Hello. Mr. Chin. The voice was unfamiliar, older, with the practiced authority of management. This is Richard Hawthorne, Regional Director for Sentinel Protection Services. I believe you had an unfortunate interaction with one of our employees yesterday. My stomach dropped. Derek had escalated this up the chain, which meant he was either covering his tracks or preparing for something bigger. I'm not sure what you mean. Please, let's not play games. Derek Morrison has filed a formal incident report claiming you were conducting unauthorized surveillance of our personnel and potentially casing retail locations for criminal activity. Hawthorne's tone was measured, professional. These are serious allegations. Jake was frantically taking notes, his expression growing darker by the second. That's completely false, I said. Your employee publicly humiliated me for asking about a watch, and I simply left the store. Yes, well, Derek's report tells a different story. According to mall security footage, you returned multiple times over the past few days, photographing employees and taking detailed notes about their schedules. Hawthorne paused. We also have reports that you've been making inquiries about our company's operations and employee records. My blood turned to ice. Derek was building a comprehensive false narrative, and somehow he had management backing him up. Either Hawthorne was in on the theft ring, or Derek was more skilled at manipulation than I'd given him credit for. I want to offer you an opportunity to resolve this quietly, Hawthorne continued. Meet with Derek and myself this afternoon. We'll review the evidence together, and I'm confident we can reach an understanding that protects everyone's interests. What kind of understanding? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Well, hypothetically, if someone were conducting industrial espionage or planning criminal activity, but they ceased those activities and signed appropriate non-disclosure agreements, we might be inclined to handle the matter internally rather than involving law enforcement. Jake was writing furiously now, underlining words like blackmail and conspiracy in his notes. And if I don't want to meet? Hawthorne's professional veneer cracked slightly. Then we'll be forced to pursue all available legal remedies. Derek has already prepared a comprehensive report for the police, including photographic evidence and witness statements. I understand you work in technology. Corporate background checks for criminal harassment charges can be quite damaging to one's career prospects. The threat was crystal clear. They wanted me isolated and vulnerable, probably planning to make me disappear as a problem entirely. But what terrified me most was how quickly they'd moved to construct this elaborate cover story. I'll need to think about it, I said. Of course. But don't take too long, Derek is quite upset about this situation, and I'm not sure how long I can keep him from filing formal charges. Hawthorne's voice carried a subtle menace. Let's say 6 p.m. today. Crosswinds Mall Security Office. Come alone, naturally. The line went dead. Jake was already on his radio, calling for additional units. This just became a potential kidnapping scenario, he told his dispatcher. We need tactical support and immediate warrants for Sentinel Protection Services. As I watched police cars mobilize around us, one thought kept racing through my mind. Derek hadn't just stumbled into this theft operation, he was part of something much larger and more dangerous. And now they all knew exactly who I was. By 4 p.m., Jake's investigation had taken a disturbing turn. The tactical team's surveillance of Crosswinds Mall revealed that Derek and Webb weren't just running a simple theft operation, they had systematically corrupted multiple levels of mall management. Look at this, Jake said, spreading security photos across his desk. Your boy Derek has been photographed meeting with Thomas Brennan, the mall's operations manager, at least 6 times in the past month. Always in parking garages or off-site locations. I studied the grainy surveillance images. Maybe Brennan's investigating them. That's what I thought until we ran his financials. Jake pulled up another file. Brennan bought a $90,000 BMW last month, cash. His legitimate salary is $65,000 a year. The scope of the conspiracy was expanding faster than I could process. So mall management is getting a cut. It's worse than that. Jake's expression was grim. We pulled the mall's insurance claims. Over the past 2 years, they've collected over $400,000 in theft and vandalism claims. Merchandise supposedly stolen by shoplifters, security equipment mysteriously damaged, even a few break-ins where only high-end inventory went missing. My mind raced through the implications. They're not just stealing lost items, they're manufacturing thefts to collect insurance money, then selling the stolen merchandise through their eBay operation. Exactly. And here's the kicker, Sentinel Protection Services contract requires them to investigate all thefts and provide security reports for insurance claims. Derek and his crew are essentially investigating their own crimes and filing reports that support fraudulent claims. A new text notification on my phone made us both freeze. Unknown number again. Asterisk, plans changed. Meet at Pier 47 Warehouse District, 7 p.m. Come alone or the police get very interesting footage of you breaking into our computer systems. Asterisk. Jake immediately started tracing the number while I stared at the message. They're trying to move the meeting to an isolated location. That's not good. It's worse than not good, Jake muttered, looking up from his computer. Pier 47 is owned by a shell company called Maritime Holdings LLC. Want to guess who's listed as the registered agent? My stomach sank. Richard Hawthorne. Bingo. This isn't just about covering up a theft ring anymore, they're planning something permanent. As Jake coordinated with the tactical team for a new surveillance operation, my laptop chimed with an encrypted email notification. The sender was listed as a friend, but the message made my blood freeze. Asterisk, Derek's not the only one watching you. Downloaded your entire digital footprint before you changed your passwords. Photos of your condo, your car, your gym schedule. They know you called the police. Meeting tonight is a trap. Don't go, but don't run either, they have people watching your apartment. You're in deeper than you know. Trust no one from Sentinel or mall management. We'll contact again soon. Asterisk. I showed Jake the message, and his face went pale. Someone inside their operation is trying to warn you. Question is whether it's legitimate or another trap. Before either of us could respond, Jake's radio crackled with urgent chatter from the surveillance team. All units, be advised, subject Derek Morrison and 3 unknown males just entered the Pier 47 location. They're setting up what appears to be recording equipment and restraints. This is looking like a kidnapping setup. Jake grabbed his jacket and weapon. We're moving now. Full tactical response. But as we headed for the door, my phone rang one final time. The caller ID showed my own home number. They're in your apartment, Jake said grimly as we ran for his car. These people aren't just trying to scare you anymore, they're preparing to make you disappear entirely. As police sirens wailed around us, heading toward what was clearly going to be a showdown, I realized that my petty revenge against an arrogant security guard had uncovered a criminal conspiracy that reached far beyond anything I'd imagined. And now they wanted me dead for it. The tactical team's raid on Pier 47 went sideways in the worst possible way. As we approached the warehouse district, Jake's radio exploded with panicked chatter. Warehouse is empty. Repeat, warehouse is empty. Found recording equipment and zip ties, but no subjects. This was a diversion. My phone immediately started buzzing with notifications. Someone was systematically posting my personal information across social media, my home address, workplace, even my daily routines. The posts claimed I was a dangerous stalker who had been threatening mall employees and their families. They're trying to destroy your reputation while we're chasing shadows, Jake said grimly, pulling a U-turn toward my apartment complex. Classic misdirection. But when we arrived at my building, the parking garage was chaos. My car's windows had been smashed, and someone had spray-painted pervert and stalker across the sides in bright red letters. Worse, a crowd of my neighbors was gathered around the entrance, many of them holding printed flyers. Mrs. Patterson from 3B shoved one of the papers in my face as I got out of Jake's car. How could you? Taking pictures of children at the mall. We trusted you. My hands shook as I read the flyer. It contained my photo, name, and apartment number, along with fabricated accusations about inappropriate photography of minors and harassment of female employees. At the bottom, in official-looking text, Crosswinds Mall Security has issued a formal warning about this individual. Report any sightings to local authorities. This is all lies, I said, but Mrs. Patterson had already stepped back, pulling her teenage daughter behind her. Jake flashed his badge and started dispersing the crowd, but the damage was done. Derek's crew hadn't just planned to kidnap me, they'd prepared a comprehensive character assassination that would destroy my life even if I survived. As we rode the elevator to my floor, Jake's phone rang. His face went ashen as he listened. That was my captain, he said after hanging up. Sentinel Protection Services filed a formal complaint against you 2 hours ago. They're claiming you hacked their systems and have been stalking their employees. They've provided what appears to be security footage and digital evidence. My stomach plummeted. Fabricated evidence. Maybe, but it's sophisticated enough that Internal Affairs wants to question me about working with a potential cybercriminal. I'm being pulled from the case pending review. As the elevator dinged on my floor, I saw my apartment door standing slightly ajar. Jake immediately drew his weapon and pushed me behind him. Someone's been inside, he whispered, calling for backup. We found my home office completely destroyed. Every hard drive had been removed, my servers were missing, and someone had poured what looked like coffee over my remaining equipment. But worse than the destruction was what they'd left behind. Taped to my monitor was a printed screenshot of my encrypted email to Jake, along with a note, we have everything. Every file you downloaded, every system you accessed, every law you broke getting your evidence. You have 24 hours to disappear permanently, or we release proof that you're a cybercriminal and sexual predator. The choice is yours. Jake stared at the note, his career hanging in the balance. They've been monitoring your communications this entire time. They know about our investigation, our evidence, everything. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a new message from a friend, *, Derek's people have a contact inside the police department. Your detective friend is about to be arrested on charges of collaborating with a hacker. They're moving faster than expected. Get out now. Asterisk. Through my apartment window, I could see unmarked cars pulling into the parking lot. But these weren't Jake's backup units. Their positioning was all wrong, designed to block exits rather than provide support. Jake, I said quietly, I think those are Derek's people, not yours. He looked out the window and his face went white. Those aren't police vehicles. We need to leave. Now. As we headed for the fire escape, my laptop, the one piece of equipment they'd left untouched, chimed with an incoming video call from an unknown number. Derek's face appeared on screen, grinning from what looked like a security office. Hello there, Mr. Chen. I think it's time we had that conversation after all. Derek's face filled my laptop screen, that same smug expression he'd worn when humiliating me at the store. But now there was something darker behind his eyes, the look of a man who'd already crossed lines he couldn't uncross. Surprised to see me? Derek said, leaning back in what I recognized as the Crosswinds Mall security office. You really thought you were clever, didn't you? Playing detective, digging through our files like some kind of cyberhero. Jake moved toward the window, checking the positions of the vehicles below. His jaw was tight with the realization that his own department might be compromised. Here's what's going to happen, Derek continued, his voice taking on the same condescending tone he'd used at the jewelry store. You're going to walk out of that apartment, get in the black SUV that's waiting downstairs, and we're going to have a nice, quiet conversation about how to clean up this mess you've made. And if I don't? I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. Derek's grin widened. Well, that would be unfortunate. You see, we've prepared quite a comprehensive case against you. Digital evidence showing you've been hacking into private companies, stalking mall employees, even some very disturbing browser history that somehow appeared on your devices. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just stolen my equipment, they'd planted evidence on it. But that's not even the best part, Derek said, clearly enjoying himself. Marcus, come show our friend what we've been working on. The camera panned to reveal Webb sitting at another computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. On his screen, I could see what looked like financial transactions, dozens of them, all flowing into accounts with my name attached. Turns out you've been quite the entrepreneur, Derek laughed. Selling stolen merchandise online, laundering money through cryptocurrency exchanges, even identity theft. Amazing what a detailed digital forensic investigation can uncover. Jake grabbed my shoulder. They're framing you for their entire operation, he whispered urgently. Every crime they've committed, they're preparing to pin on you. Oh, and Detective Morrison. Derek's voice sharpened as he apparently spotted Jake on the video feed. Yes, we know you're there. Internal Affairs is going to be very interested in your collaboration with a known cybercriminal. Especially since you've been accessing police databases to help him target victims. Jake's face went pale. That's not. Marcus, send Detective Morrison that special file we prepared, Derek interrupted. The one showing how he's been feeding information to our hacker friend here. Webb's computer chimed, and I watched in horror as fabricated email threads appeared on screen, conversations that never happened, showing Jake supposedly providing me with police intelligence and helping me target victims for identity theft. You have 30 seconds to get downstairs, Derek said, his playful tone vanishing entirely. Every second you delay, we release more evidence. First to your employer, then to the media, then to every law enforcement database in the state. My phone started buzzing frantically. Text messages were flooding in, from coworkers, friends, even my parents, all asking about news articles that were apparently going live in real time. Derek's crew had prepared a complete media blitz to destroy my reputation instantly. 20 seconds, Derek announced. Oh, and just so we're clear, running won't help. We've got your credit cards, your bank accounts, your cell phone tracking. Marcus here is quite talented with financial systems. Amazing how much damage someone can do with the right access. Jake was frantically texting someone on his phone while watching the vehicles below. My backup is 10 minutes out, but those cars are moving into position. They're not planning to take you anywhere, they're planning to finish this here. 10 seconds, Derek said cheerfully. Time to make your choice, Mr. Chin. Come down and let's discuss this like civilized people, or become the most wanted cybercriminal in the state. Your call. As Derek started counting down from 10, my laptop screen suddenly went black. But through the window, I could see armed figures emerging from the vehicles below, and they definitely weren't dressed like police. The laptop screen flickered back to life, but it wasn't Derek's face that appeared, it was someone I didn't recognize. A woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a Sentinel Protection Services uniform, but her name tag was covered with electrical tape. You have about 2 minutes before Derek's people breach your building, she said quickly. I'm the one who's been sending you warnings. Detective, your backup isn't coming. Derek's contact in the department rerouted them to a fake emergency across town. Jake cursed under his breath, checking his weapon. Who are you? Sandra Mills, internal auditor for Sentinel's corporate office. I've been investigating irregularities in their mall contracts for 6 months. Derek's operation is bigger than you think, they're running identical schemes in 8 different cities. My mind raced as I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. How did you get access to Derek's video feed? Because I'm sitting in Sentinel's corporate security center, not the mall office. Derek thinks he's talking to you from a secure location, but I've been monitoring all their communications since yesterday. Sandra's fingers flew across her keyboard. The good news is I've been recording everything, his threats, the evidence fabrication, all of it. A loud bang echoed from my front door, followed by muffled voices. Jake positioned himself by the apartment entrance while I grabbed my backup laptop and the encrypted drive containing my original research. The bad news, Sandra continued, is that Derek's people just cut the building's fire alarm system. They're planning to stage this as a break-in gone wrong, then use the chaos to destroy any remaining evidence and disappear. Through my apartment's thin walls, I could hear my neighbors' doors slamming as people fled the building. Derek's crew had probably told them there was a gas leak or bomb threat, anything to clear witnesses. Sandra, can you contact real police? Not through Jake's department. I asked while stuffing essential documents into a backpack. Already did, but Derek's faster than I expected. He's got a 24-hour head start on covering his tracks. Her voice became urgent. But I found something else, financial records showing payments to Detective Morrison. Not Jake Morrison, Detective Sarah Morrison from Internal Affairs. Jake's face went white. That's my sister. She's been asking me strange questions about computer crime procedures for weeks. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Derek hadn't just corrupted mall management, he'd been cultivating contacts throughout the police department for months, probably targeting officers with financial problems or family connections to active investigators. A new sound made us all freeze, the apartment's front door lock clicking open. Derek's people had bypassed it completely. Back exit, now, Jake whispered, but Sandra's voice stopped us. Wait, they've got the fire escape covered too. But there's a third option. Her screen split to show building schematics. Maintenance access to the roof through the utility closet. From there you can reach the adjacent building. Heavy footsteps were moving through my living room now, multiple people spreading out to search systematically. I could hear them overturning furniture and checking closets. Sandra, whatever evidence you have, upload it everywhere, I whispered, shouldering my backpack. News outlets, FBI field offices, social media, flood the system before they can stop you. Already started, she replied grimly. But Derek's people are trying to cut my access. I can hold them off for maybe 10 more minutes. As Jake and I slipped into the utility closet, my phone buzzed with one final message from Derek, *, found your little friend at corporate. Tell Sandra that Marcus says hello, he's in the elevator heading to her floor right now. *. The screen went dead, and we were alone in the dark, climbing toward an uncertain escape while Sandra faced Derek's people with only a locked office door between them. The maintenance ladder was slick with condensation and years of grime, but we climbed in desperate silence toward the roof access. Behind us, I could hear Derek's men systematically destroying my apartment, their voices growing louder and more frustrated as they realized we'd slipped away. They're in the walls, one of them shouted. Check every access panel. Jake's phone vibrated against his belt, 3 short bursts, pause, 3 more. That's Sandra's emergency signal, he whispered. She's in trouble. We reached the roof hatch just as my phone lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. You can run, but you can't hide forever. Derek's voice was tight with rage now, the professional facade completely gone. And your friend Sandra just learned what happens to people who interfere with our operation. What did you do to her? Nothing permanent, yet. But Marcus is very persuasive when he needs to be. She's agreed to help us correct some of the misinformation she's been spreading. Derek's laugh was cold. Turns out corporate auditors can be just as corrupt as anyone else when properly motivated. My stomach dropped. If they'd compromised Sandra, they now had access to everything she collected on their operation, plus the ability to discredit any evidence she'd already released. Jake pushed open the roof hatch and immediately pulled back. Drone, he whispered, pointing at a small aircraft hovering silently above the adjacent building. They've got aerial surveillance. The drone's camera swiveled toward us, its red recording light blinking ominously. Seconds later, Derek's voice crackled through my phone again, smile for the camera, gentlemen. This footage is going to be very useful for demonstrating how dangerous you both are. I watched in horror as the drone began broadcasting our position. Below, I could see black SUVs repositioning around the building perimeter, cutting off every possible escape route. But worse than being trapped was the realization that Derek was documenting everything for his fabricated narrative. He's going to claim we were armed and dangerous, Jake said grimly, checking his service weapon. Classic justification for whatever happens next. My phone buzzed with a text from Sandra's number, *, sorry. They have my family. Had to give them access to corporate systems. Derek now has administrative control over all Sentinel security footage and employee records. Can delete evidence of their crimes in real time. You need physical proof they can't manipulate digitally. *. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. All the digital evidence I'd collected, transaction records, communications logs, even the recordings Sandra had made, could now be altered or destroyed remotely. Derek wasn't just covering his tracks, he was rewriting history. We need to get back to the mall, I said suddenly. Derek's physical office, his personal files, anything he can't manipulate from a computer terminal. Jake stared at me like I'd lost my mind. That's exactly where he wants us to go. It's suicide. No, it's the one place he can't completely control the narrative. My programmer's brain was working frantically through the logistics. He's been operating out of that security office for 2 years. There has to be physical evidence, stolen merchandise, financial records, something that proves what he's been doing. The drone descended closer, its camera zooming in on our faces. In the distance, I could hear sirens, but given Derek's police connections, I couldn't tell if they were coming to help us or arrest us. Jake's radio crackled with an emergency broadcast. All units, be advised, armed suspects have taken a hostage at Crosswinds Mall. Tactical teams responding. Derek was already 3 steps ahead of us, staging the final act of his cover-up. And we were running out of time to prove the truth before his version of events became the only one that mattered. My phone exploded with notifications as we crouched on the roof, trapped between the drone above and Derek's men below. Social media was lighting up with breaking news alerts, cyber terrorist holds mall security hostage, and armed hacker threatens shopping center. Derek wasn't just framing us, he was orchestrating a media circus in real time. Look at this, I whispered to Jake, showing him my screen. The news feeds were showing live footage of me supposedly threatening Derek in the mall security office. Except I'd never been in that office, and the timestamp showed it happening right now while we were stuck on this roof. Deepfake technology, Jake breathed. They're manufacturing evidence faster than we can disprove it. The drone suddenly banking away caught our attention. Through its departing camera feed, still visible on my hijacked social media accounts, I watched it zoom toward the mall parking lot where Derek was staging his grand finale. News vans were already arriving, their satellite dishes extending toward the sky. Derek had called in every local media outlet, ensuring maximum coverage of whatever he was planning. But something about the staging bothered me, it was too perfect, too coordinated. My phone rang. Sandra's number again, but this time her voice was barely a whisper. They think I'm unconscious, but I'm not. Listen carefully, Derek made a mistake. He's not actually at the mall. What do you mean? The security office feed you saw. It's pre-recorded. He's been using green screen technology to make it look like he's on site, but GPS data shows he's at the Port Authority warehouse. The hostage situation at the mall is completely fabricated. Jake grabbed my shoulder as the implications sank in. He's creating a false crime scene to draw all police resources away from his real operation. Sandra, where are the stolen goods stored? Warehouse 47C, Port Authority. But hurry, they're loading trucks right now. Derek's liquidating everything and preparing to disappear. The line went dead, but I could hear vehicle engines starting in the distance. Not just the SUVs around our building, industrial trucks, the kind used for long-haul shipping. Jake was already moving toward the fire escape on the building's far side. If Derek's not at the mall, his men down there are just cleanup crew. We might have a chance. But as we descended, my laptop chimed with an emergency alert. Someone had just transferred $2.3 million from my bank accounts to offshore holdings. My credit cards were being maxed out on purchases in 3 different countries. Derek's financial attack was designed to make me look like I was funding an escape plan. He's making it look like you're fleeing the country with stolen money, Jake said, watching the transactions multiply on my screen. Every second we delay, the evidence against you becomes more convincing. We reached the alley behind my building just as the black SUVs began repositioning. Through their windows, I caught glimpses of the occupants. They weren't Derek's security team. They were wearing tactical gear with Sentinel Recovery Division patches, and their equipment was far more sophisticated than anything mall security should have. Recovery Division? Jake muttered. That's not on any of Sentinel's public organizational charts. My blood chilled as I realized Derek's operation was even larger than we discovered. This wasn't just about theft and insurance fraud. Sentinel had an entire clandestine division designed for situations exactly like this. As we crept toward Jake's patrol car, my phone buzzed with a final message from Derek, *, warehouse is empty. Sandra lied. But don't worry, you'll be joining her soon. Some problems require permanent solutions. *. The recovery team vehicles were already pulling away, heading toward the Port Authority. But they weren't going to stop Derek's escape, they were going to ensure no witnesses survived to contradict his story. Jake's patrol car wouldn't start. 3 tries, and nothing but clicking sounds from under the hood. They sabotaged it, he said grimly, popping the hood to reveal severed battery cables. We're walking into their trap either way, stay here and get arrested for crimes we didn't commit, or chase Derek and walk into an ambush. I was checking ride-sharing apps when Sandra's phone called again. This time her voice was stronger, more urgent. The warehouse wasn't empty. I lied because Derek was listening. But his people are moving everything to a ship at Pier 12. Container vessel called Nordic Star, scheduled to leave for international waters in 2 hours. Sandra, are you safe? For now. I'm locked in a supply closet, but I can hear them talking. Derek's not just running, he's expanding. Sentinel has contracts with port authorities in 6 countries. This mall operation was just a test run for something much bigger. Jake was already flagging down a taxi, but I grabbed his arm as a new realization hit me. Wait, if Derek's at the port, who's running the fake hostage situation at the mall? My laptop screen flickered to life with a news feed showing the mall's main entrance. Police tactical teams were surrounding the building, their rifles trained on the security office windows. But something about the scene looked off, the positioning was too perfect, like a movie set. Richard Hawthorne, Sandra's voice crackled through the phone. He's been Derek's partner from the beginning. Former FBI, knows exactly how to stage crime scenes that fool investigators. The taxi pulled up, and as we climbed in, my phone exploded with missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. News outlets, lawyers, even what looked like federal agents, all trying to reach me about the developing situation at Crosswinds Mall. Drive to the Port Authority, Jake told the cabbie, flashing his badge. Emergency police business. But as we pulled away from my building, I noticed the taxi's GPS system was displaying our route in real time on a screen visible to passengers. Anyone monitoring traffic data would know exactly where we were heading. Driver, can you turn off that display? I asked. The cabbie glanced in his rearview mirror, and my blood froze. His eyes were cold, calculating, not the expression of a random taxi driver caught up in police business. Actually, he said in an accent I couldn't place, I think we'll be taking a different route tonight. Jake's hand moved toward his weapon, but the driver was faster. A partition slid up between the front and back seats, bulletproof glass with small ventilation holes that immediately began hissing with some kind of gas. Compliments of Sentinel Recovery Division, the driver said as my vision began to blur. Mr. Derek is very eager to meet with you both. Jake managed to draw his gun but couldn't get a clear shot through the partition. The taxi was already accelerating, weaving through traffic with the precision of a trained operative. This wasn't a random cab, it was a mobile prison designed for exactly this kind of extraction. My laptop was still connected to Sandra's feed, and through my fading consciousness, I could hear her frantic voice, they found me. Derek's people are in the building. The ship is leaving early, Nordic Star is already pulling away from the dock. The last thing I saw before the gas overwhelmed me was the taxi's GPS display showing our destination, not the Port Authority, but a private airfield 20 miles outside the city. Derek wasn't just running with his stolen millions, he was taking us with him. I woke up in what felt like a moving vehicle, my head pounding and my mouth tasting like copper pennies. The gas had left me disoriented, but as my vision cleared, I realized we weren't in the fake taxi anymore. We were in the back of a cargo van, our hands zip-tied behind us, with Jake slumped unconscious beside me. Through the van's rear windows, I could see we were on a highway heading away from the city. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across industrial landscapes that looked increasingly unfamiliar. My phone was gone, along with my laptop bag and any hope of maintaining contact with Sandra. The van hit a pothole, jolting Jake awake. He immediately tested his restraints, then caught my eye with a look that said we were in serious trouble. Good, you're both conscious, a voice called from the front of the van. I recognized it as Marcus Webb, Derek's partner. Derek wants you alert for the next part. Where are you taking us? Jake demanded, his detective training keeping his voice steady despite our circumstances. Webb chuckled. Patience, officer. All your questions will be answered very soon. Through the partition between us and the front seats, I could see Webb talking into a radio. The responses were crackling with static, but I caught fragments. Cargo container prepared. And, international waters in 40 minutes. My stomach dropped. They weren't just planning to silence us, they were planning to make us disappear completely. A shipping container in international waters would be the perfect disposal method, untraceable and permanent. But as we took an exit toward what looked like industrial shipping facilities, I noticed something that gave me hope. Jake had been subtly working at his zip ties during the entire ride, and I could see one of his hands was almost free. The van slowed as we entered a maze of shipping containers and loading cranes. Through the windows, I could see the massive hull of a cargo ship, but not the Nordic Star Sandra had mentioned. This vessel was smaller, older, with Cyrillic lettering on its bow that I couldn't read. Change of plans, Webb was saying into his radio. Nordic Star was too visible after the port authority started asking questions. Captain Volkov was happy to accommodate us for the right price. Jake's hand slipped free of his restraints just as the van pulled to a stop. He immediately started working on mine, his fingers moving quickly but carefully to avoid detection. Car doors slammed outside, followed by footsteps and muffled conversations. Through the van's windows, I could see figures moving between the shipping containers, at least 6 people, all armed, all wearing the same tactical gear we'd seen at my apartment building. Here's what's going to happen, Derek's voice suddenly filled the van through an intercom system. You're going to walk quietly to Container 47 Alpha, where we'll have a final conversation about your interference in our business operations. Any attempt to resist will result in immediate consequences. The van's rear doors opened, revealing Derek standing between 2 armed men. But he looked different now. Gone was the smug mall security guard, replaced by someone who moved with military precision and wore body armor like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Welcome to the real Sentinel Protection Services, Derek said with a cold smile. The mall operation was just our small-time division. This is where we handle more, substantial security challenges. As they forced us out of the van, I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. Dozens of shipping containers were stacked around the dock, and several had fresh air vents and power cables running to them. This wasn't just a smuggling operation, it was a full-scale human trafficking hub. You stumbled into something much bigger than a few stolen watches, Derek continued as we were marched toward the ship. And unfortunately for you, we can't afford loose ends. But Jake was ready. His freed hands moved like lightning, grabbing the nearest guard's weapon while diving behind a shipping container. The dock erupted into chaos as gunfire echoed off the metal walls. Our fight for survival had just begun. The gunfire stopped as abruptly as it had started, leaving only the sound of waves lapping against the ship's hull and my heart hammering in my chest. Jake had managed to take down one of Derek's men, but now he was pinned behind a shipping container with at least 4 rifles trained on his position. Enough. Derek's voice boomed across the dock. Detective Morrison, step out now or your tech friend here gets a bullet in each kneecap. I felt the cold barrel of a gun pressed against the back of my head as one of Derek's men grabbed my shoulder. Jake's tactical advantage had evaporated in seconds, and now we were both trapped. I'm coming out, Jake called, tossing his captured weapon away from the container. As he emerged with his hands raised, I could see blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Derek gestured toward the cargo ship, where a bearded man in a captain's uniform was watching our confrontation with obvious irritation. Captain Volkov doesn't like delays. His crew needs to clear Port Authority jurisdiction before midnight. But as Derek's men began marching us toward the ship's loading ramp, my phone, which I'd assumed was gone, began buzzing in one of the guard's tactical vests. He'd taken it but apparently hadn't thought to turn it off. Sir, the guard said nervously, the device is receiving multiple incoming calls. Derek snatched the phone and his face went white as he read the screen. 17 missed calls from FBI field office, 12 from Channel 7 News, 6 from the district attorney's office. His voice was tight with barely controlled panic. What the hell is happening? The phone rang again, and this time Derek answered it, putting it on speaker. Sandra's voice crackled through, stronger and more confident than before. Derek, I hope you're listening carefully. While you've been playing kidnapper, I've been very busy. You're supposed to be locked in a supply closet, Derek snarled. I was never in a supply closet. That was misdirection to keep you focused on the wrong location. Sandra's laugh was sharp with triumph. I've been in FBI custody for the past 3 hours, providing them with everything, financial records, shipping manifests, personnel files, and full recordings of your threats. Derek's men were looking increasingly nervous, several of them backing toward vehicles parked between the containers. But Derek himself seemed to be calculating something, his eyes darting between the ship and the dock exit. Even if that's true, Derek said carefully, you have no idea where we are. And by the time anyone tracks us down, we'll be in international waters with a very different set of problems for our guests here. Actually, we know exactly where you are, Sandra replied. That taxi you used? It belongs to an FBI surveillance fleet. We've been tracking your every movement since you picked up our friends. The sound of helicopters suddenly filled the air, growing louder by the second. Spotlights began sweeping across the shipping yard, and I could see tactical vehicles positioning themselves at every exit. But Derek wasn't finished. Instead of panic, his expression had shifted to something far more dangerous, the look of a cornered animal with nothing left to lose. Captain Volkov. Derek shouted toward the ship. Emergency departure. Full payment plus bonus for immediate departure. The ship's engines roared to life, and the loading ramp began retracting. Derek was planning to take us aboard and use us as hostages to negotiate safe passage, even with the FBI surrounding the facility. Move them toward the ship. Derek commanded his remaining men. Federal agents won't risk a firefight with hostages aboard an international vessel. As we were pushed toward the water, Jake caught my eye and mouthed 2 words that chilled me to the bone, they're right. The FBI might have found us, but Derek still held all the cards, and he was desperate enough to use them. The ship's loading ramp was halfway retracted when everything changed. Captain Volkov suddenly cut the engines and began shouting in what sounded like Russian at his crew. Derek spun around in confusion, still gripping his weapon, as federal agents emerged from behind shipping containers like ghosts materializing from shadows. Captain's being very cooperative, Sandra's voice crackled through my phone speaker, still in Derek's hand. Turns out he's been looking for a way out of his agreement with Sentinel for months. Human trafficking wasn't part of his original contract. Derek's face contorted with rage as he realized his escape route had evaporated. You think this is over? I still have hostages, and I still have enough evidence planted to destroy both of them. Actually, about that evidence, Sandra continued, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Funny thing about digital forensics, when you know what to look for, fabricated data has a very distinct signature. Every transaction you planted, every fake communication you created, every piece of manufactured evidence has already been identified and flagged as fraudulent. Derek's remaining men were dropping their weapons and raising their hands as FBI agents closed in from all directions. But Derek himself seemed to be spiraling into desperation, his gun wavering between Jake and me. 2 years of work, he snarled. 2 years building this operation, and it's destroyed because some entitled tech bro couldn't handle being told he was too cheap for a watch store. I found my voice for the first time since waking up in the van. You're right, I couldn't handle it. But not because my feelings were hurt. I took a step toward him, ignoring the weapon trained on me. I couldn't handle watching you abuse your authority to humiliate people who reminded you of your own failures. Derek's gun hand trembled with fury. My failures? A security guard who had to steal from Lost and found to afford the lifestyle he thought he deserved, I continued, my programmer's mind cataloging every detail of his psychological profile. A man so insecure about his own worth that he had to tear down others to feel powerful. You don't know anything about. I know everything about you, Derek. Your divorce, your child support payments, your constant financial stress despite a decent salary. You turned into the exact kind of person who used to make you feel small. Something in Derek's expression cracked, and for a moment I saw not a criminal mastermind but a broken man who'd lost himself somewhere along the way. The gun lowered slightly as federal agents moved into position. Derek Morrison, an FBI agent, called out through a bullhorn, drop your weapon and step away from the hostages. There's nowhere left to run. Derek looked around at the tactical team surrounding us, at Captain Volkov's crew surrendering on the ship's deck, at his own men already in handcuffs. His criminal empire was collapsing in real time. This isn't how it was supposed to end, he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. No, I agreed. It was supposed to end with an apology at a jewelry store. Everything else was your choice. Derek dropped his weapon and raised his hands as federal agents swarmed the dock. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one final time. For what it's worth, he said, you were right about the watch. It was overpriced. 6 months later, I walked into Bucher wearing the same jeans and hoodie I'd worn that Saturday afternoon. The saleswoman recognized me immediately, my face had been all over the news during Derek's trial. Mr. Chen, she said warmly. How can I help you today? I pointed to the same Omega Seamaster that had started everything. I'd like to know about the sale price on that piece. She smiled and reached for the display key. Of course. And thank you again for everything you did. That security guard made a lot of people feel unwelcome here. As she showed me the watch, I reflected on how a moment of petty humiliation had accidentally exposed a multi-million-dollar criminal conspiracy. Derek was serving 15 years in federal prison, along with Webb and Hawthorne. Sentinel Protection Services had been disbanded, and Sandra had been promoted to head of corporate security for the company that bought their legitimate contracts. Sometimes the smallest acts of standing up for yourself can have the biggest consequences. And yes, I bought the watch.